Coming to you from 4,200 feet in the hills of Oregon, it's the voice of Chi-Town, the reddest beard in the high desert, your host of the MOA broadcast, Sam Wilson. All right, folks, we are back, and as usual, we've got a fantastic show lined up for you today. Let's get right into it, and let's go to our show highlights. I tell you what an action-packed weekend and week it has been, although you can pretty much say that of almost any week or weekend these days. We had the Olympics over the weekend. We had El Mencho over the weekend and all kind of stuff. So this is Season 2, Episode 4 of the Make It Out Alive broadcast. In our Season 2, Episode 4 MOA broadcast show highlights, we have Olympic hockey, humiliation, desolate death in the mountains, a freezing float trip gone wrong, and armed mobility scooter meltdowns. So good stuff. We got a lot of material. I'll probably have to wind up cutting some of this on the fly and just move it forward, bump it to the next program. We're going to try and get 2 episodes out a week. I had the last quarter of 2025 was just absolute mayhem between the Gear Convoy, our web store, with the mid-tech line of knives we make here, the U.S.-made knives, and then the custom side, and then other things we have going on. It's just been, I have not had the time to dedicate to the show, and like I said before, I didn't want to put out a subpar product. So anyway, we're trying to get back on track here and get out 2 episodes a week, or at least 1 a week, and keep some regularity. I know we have a lot of listeners that have wondered, I've got some emails, why is it, so sporadic? Guys, I'm sorry. I've only got so much time. Excuse me. I've only got so much time, and I've got to take care of the things that, number one, that have to get taken care of, and then the things that generate the money and so forth. So I'm doing what I can. So we're working on it. I don't follow sports. I've talked about this a number of times. I'm not a huge fan of sports. And here, especially in I can't speak for other countries. I can't say, I guess, especially in the U.S., but in the U.S. is where I can speak substantively and for sure of myself, of the facts and so forth. Assuredly, that's the word I'm looking for. Sports have really taken on an inordinate amount of time and importance in people's lives. I've worked at different places over the years, over the course of a couple of different decades, where guys will spend all evening or all weekend watching sports. Then they'll watch sports shows before and after the sporting event. And then they'll watch shows that sit there and talk about what just happened that they just spent hours watching. Then they'll show up at work on Monday or Tuesday or whatever, and they'll talk with their buddies about all the sports. So anyway, that's your business. I'm not knocking it. As far as that's how you spend your time, that's your choice. No one has to give me an explanation. I'm not your daddy. But I do think, I think to myself, what a waste of time, that is the massive allotment of time that is devoted to sports by some people, particularly males, but I'm sure there are plenty of female sports fans as well. I just think it's a tremendous amount of time that could be devoted towards doing something that had at least some sort of beneficial outcome or, some sort of positive effect on your life. Now, I get it's entertainment, but you could take half that time and devote it to something that gives you some sort of dividend. That's my opinion. Anyway, I'll move on. We're getting off track here. The point is, over the weekend, we had the Olympics, okay? Not being a sports fan or follower, I didn't watch any of the Olympics, but I did happen to see that the USA men's and women's hockey team won gold over the weekend. And this was particularly notable in the men's hockey team because I guess they have not won gold in hockey for 46 years. There was some big deal with the Russians or something, I can't remember, back in the 80s, where it was the last time the USA men's hockey team won gold, and they beat Canada. And of course, hockey is Canada's, that's one of their big sports. That's a big Canadian product. And so, man, the USA beat them. Now, I didn't watch it, but I saw tons of posts and clips and stuff covering this. And apparently, they didn't like crush them. I guess the USA, offensively, they weren't doing that great, but defensively, their goalie, I guess, is what really saved the day. I don't know. Again, I didn't watch. I don't really care that much. What does crack me up, though, is they won. Canada lost, and Canada is just getting dragged on social media because they're being a bunch of big, whiny, poo-poo head, sore loser babies about this. And they are getting totally shredded on social media over this. It is extremely petty. It's embarrassing. There are all these videos. I didn't watch the games. I don't really care. I just find it hilarious that there are all these people that are rage baiting and posting all over Canadian channels, just slamming them over this. And there are people continuing to put out content that are presumably Canadians, or they're portraying themselves as Canadians, defending it and saying that the USA only won because of this and blah, blah, blah. And they're being totally sore losers about this. And it's hilarious because Canada has been taking a beating recently online. I try and not get in too deep into the politics because I'm so tired of it. I'm tired of saying something and someone goes, "Oh, did you vote for Biden? Oh, did you vote for Trump?" I didn't say it. I was talking about a doctor visit, or I was talking about, getting a gallon of gasoline. Where do we go to, Trump or Biden or whatever from this? I'm tired of that. But they have been just slamming the U.S. left and right over on social media, all over Trump this and tariff that, and they have just been taking L after L. That stands for loss, and L for a loss if you're if you're not of the slightly younger generation. And they have just been taking a beating. And so now, I guess they figured they would get the hockey thing and win the gold and whatever, and they got stomped. The women and the men both, didn't win the gold in hockey, and they are just getting beaten up online, and it's hilarious. The people that are rage baiting them. So if you don't know what rage baiting, if you're an old codger like me, I guess, I've been pretty much an old man since I was about 16 years old. Rage baiting is when people post things online, whether it's true or not, to just get you all. We used to call it getting somebody's goat. Years ago, you say, "Oh, he got his goat." Now what exactly that means? That's a whole other, whatever, idiomatic expression, I guess. But or colloquialism or whatever, probably idiomatic. But regardless, rage baiting is whenever you say something just to get somebody all wound up. And the Canadians are walking right into this. They are flipping out. And I'm sure some of this is fake paid content, but it's still hilarious to just watch it. It's crazy. And they are just being such sore losers over this. And the U.S., they were clearly the inferior team, but blah, blah, blah. They got lucky because their goalie, blah, blah, blah. I don't care about it on the patriotic or the national front. It's just a matter of, it's hilarious to watch somebody completely, a whole country or a group of people, I guess, online just losing it. So anyway, that was good. El Mencho was captured and killed or executed or whatever. So if you don't know, over or down in Mexico from here in the United States, our southern border, we have Mexico. In Jalisco, there was I can't remember what it's called, the CJC, I don't know, whatever. There's some sort of cartel out of Jalisco, Mexico, and El Mencho was the big head honcho of this drug cartel. And apparently the Mexican government, or whatever task force, whatever they call their particular deal, strike force that does this, acting in, apparently there was some sort of U.S. involvement as far as intelligence. I don't know. Whatever. Either way, El Mencho was the big honcho. He was the Pablo Escobar, I guess, of this week down in Mexico, and he was whacked out over the weekend in Mexico. And man, his cartel is going buck wild. If you have seen videos of what is going on in Mexico, it is insane. They are taking tractor trailers and they are parking them and driving them across all the lanes of highways and setting them on fire to create blockades going in and out of cities. And whatever their objective is, I don't know. I guess they're just mad right now and they're just burning the place down. But it is absolutely crazy. So if you have plans to go to Mexico, please watch the news, look up El Mencho, and stay away, because there are people that are going through it right now down there in Mexico. They are all over the place, not just in Jalisco. They are all over the place, tearing the place up because they are mad, excuse me, about the death of El Mencho. And I mean, who knows if he was even actually killed? You can't trust anything anymore. I don't even, who knows what actually happened, but that's the story they're feeding us. And there is nothing but mayhem and bedlam down there in Mexico right now. So keep that in mind if you are headed down that way on holiday, as they say in Europa. Okay, now let me get a quick sip here. My voice is already, it's been a long day already. This happened not too long ago. I was having a discussion around a group of people, and we were talking about chickens. Now, I live out in the middle of nowhere. So if you're a city person, and I'm not looking down on you or condescending to you from the country, this may or may not make sense to you, or you may not be familiar with this. Maybe you are. I don't know. I always thought this was basic biology that we learned early on, but we were having a discussion about chickens. And there were two people in the group, and they were talking about they were going to get chickens, and they found out where they lived they couldn't have roosters. They wanted to have chickens at their place in town to produce eggs. And they found out they couldn't have roosters, so they were talking about how they had to find someone to either take or slaughter the chickens that they have. And so me and another country boy in the group looked at each other and were like, whoa. And then we asked them, what are you talking about? Why would you have them slaughtered or, give them away? What's the point? And they're like, well, if we can't have roosters, then we're not going to get eggs out of the chickens. That was an intentional moment of silence. Listen, be honest. Tell me now. How many of you out there that are listening to this did not know that you do not need roosters to get eggs from chickens? Okay, just to be clear, the chickens, the hens, the females, they produce eggs as a matter of course, as long as they are healthy and so forth. There is no involvement of a rooster required to produce eggs. Just be honest. Answer now to yourself. How many of you didn't know that? So we got to talking about this, and it was very embarrassing. I was actually I laughed pretty loud. I thought they were joking. I couldn't believe someone didn't know that. In all fairness, there have been many things in my life that they should have been obvious that I didn't know, whatever. It was funny, though. I did some research, though. Where did my, let's see, did I pull the thing up here? Here we go. What percentage, I did an online search of this, what percentage of people did not know that chickens do not need roosters to lay eggs? The answer, according to online, that's the internet. It's a series of tubes, for those of you that don't know. Anecdotal evidence from social media polls and agricultural forums suggests that potentially around 50% or more in non-farming urbanized populations, that's city people, okay, fine, mistakenly believe a rooster is necessary for hens to lay eggs. Now, listen, what I want you to do is, if you don't mind, send an email to info@gearconvoy.com and just say, yes or no. That's all you got to put. You can even use a fake email address. I don't care. I'm just curious to get a poll, to get the pulse on this. How many people did or did not know that roosters are not necessary to produce eggs for chickens? So that's info@gearconvoy.com. If you have any feedback, suggestions, or questions or comments, feel free to send it to that email address, info@gearconvoy.com. Okay, we haven't done fan mail in a while, and I've been getting them stacked up. A lot of them are very similar, so we haven't got to them. Some of them have been quite nasty. We'll get to those too. I'll have to censor some of it out because, as I've mentioned before, this goes out as a radio show, and I try to be very respectful of the radio station. Those folks have been very good to me, and so I don't want to do anything to offend them or their listeners. So we tend to bleep all the stuff that's even marginally offensive and try our best to keep this show around PG to a very low to medium PG-13 produced to finished product. But we do have an email today that I wanted to get to because I've talked a number of times. Let me close this out, pull this up. Where'd the email go? Blah, blah, blah. Here we go. I've talked a number of times about these First Amendment auditors, okay? And I've mentioned in the past a number of times that I haven't named many or any of them with maybe the exception of one or two, named any of them by name on the show here. And not that my show is some sort of big sort of influence, a small, audience, whatever. I don't care. I enjoy it. I talk what I want to talk about. I don't sit here and spend it all harping and riffing on politics and stuff nonstop. And I hope that people enjoy that. I know that some people do because they've told me that. We talk about maybe political subjects occasionally, but we don't sit here and try and cram it down your throat and become partisan and support one side or the other. And just, I'm so tired. I'm past. It's so hard that I can't describe to you how far past I am being pigeonholed into all this political stuff. Anyway, but the First Amendment auditors, for those of you who don't recall, or this may be your first episode here on the show, the First Amendment auditors are these guys that will go around, they'll take, and gals, there are females too that do it, they take their cell phone or a camera or whatever, and they go put themselves and insert themselves into a public situation, whether it's a farmer's market or a post office or just walking down the street, and they will film things. And sure enough, almost immediately, frequently, there will be interactions with people, both positive and negative, and frequently the police will get called, and then they film the aftermath of what happens, and they kind of see whether the police officers know about their civil rights and so forth. You have the right in the United States of America, in general, you have the right to pretty much film whatever you want out in public. As long as you are in public and you see it, you can film it and then, do whatever you want with the footage within reason. You can't use it for illegal, purposes. Like if you capture someone's ATM, PIN code and you have their card or their medical information, you can't use it for your personal gain or own aggrandizement. But, you can film things in general in public without hindrance or limitation. For some reason, there are still, years after this has been decided by the Supreme Court, there are police officers and so forth that don't know this, and it leads to some pretty spicy interactions leading up to and including physical violence, getting tased, pepper sprayed, arrested, and so forth. Okay. My stance on this has simply been that I enjoy seeing what happens, and I'm a huge fan of freedom. Even if I don't necessarily agree with or like the way you're using your freedom, if it is your right, I'm not going to get in the way and stop you because I'm a huge fan of freedom, and especially or particularly if you have a constitutional right to do something. So anyways, but some of these First Amendment auditors are definitely anti-police and so forth. And let me get into the email, and then it makes sense from there. Hello. My name is Jared, and I listen to the show. I like the stuff about the outdoors and knives and current events and some of the humor. Notably, he didn't say all of the humor. We're probably about the same age, so I see where you're coming from. I don't have a problem at all with the fact that you're not politically correct, parentheses, or PC, or whatever it's called today, in parentheses. But what is the deal with supporting these First Amendment frauditors? Frauditor is a term for... the problem with some of these First Amendment auditors is that, honestly, it's pretty clear they're gaslighting people in some cases. They're not really pure in intention. They're not just doing this to test out the social mores and how people are going to respond to a camera and so forth. They're doing it just to get likes, just to get clicks, just to generate income on YouTube or Facebook, whatever. So sometimes they're called frauditors because they're kind of a fraud. Some of them are, in my opinion. Back to the email. I know there are some bad cops out there, but these guys just like to highlight the negative interactions and not support law enforcement. I think I probably know where you stand politically on a lot of these things, but what do you have to say to that? Otherwise, I enjoy the show. Thank you for putting out the content. I listen while I drive to and from work. Jared. Okay, Jared, thank you. That was actually a very insightful and good email that got to the point and had some good points all the way around. I do support police officers. I do support especially law and order. I've got a lot of friends because of professions I've worked in the past. I've got a lot of friends and people that I know, even if I'm not friends, I'm friendly with or know or are acquainted with, who are in law enforcement in a variety of different aspects. And I support law and order. The last thing I want or you want, whether you realize it or not, is bedlam or mayhem. You do not want that. You want law and order. But the problem is, many others, myself included, have had, hang on, these stinking computers. Let me kill this notification here. Have had negative interactions with law enforcement due to no real, actions or efforts on my own, or no fault of my own. I have had several stories. I think I've related a couple of them, but I've got a whole stack more, not a ton, but several that I could relate, where I was doing nothing wrong, literally nothing wrong, not breaking any law. And basically, a cop or a law enforcement officer, state trooper, whatever you want to call it, got a burr under their saddle, or their ego got a little bruised, and they decided to sit there and essentially harass me in what I would consider illegally, in an illegal manner, because they didn't like, the cut of my jib, so to speak. And many others have had experiences like this. And when you see this, it makes you distrustful of police in general, because you never know what you're going to get. It's not law and order that you're not supporting. It's what kind of cop am I going to get today? And that's what a lot of these First Amendment auditors do. They kind of focus on, they like to focus on the negative, because obviously negative interactions are going to get more attention, more clicks, more likes, and it's going to generate more revenue, more viewers, more followers, yada, yada, yada. So no, I am not against I'm not against the First Amendment. I'm not against police officers, but in general, I don't know anymore. I had 2 months ago, I had 3 or 4 negative interactions with law enforcement in the course of like 8 or 12 days. None of which was my fault, and none of those situations did I do anything wrong. I broke no law. I got no ticket. There were no ramifications legally to me. But basically, for some reason, in this concentrated period of time, 3 or 4 different cops decided to, mess around with me, I guess, really, because I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't even really get warnings. So my point is, you never know what you're going to get. My general rule in life now has been to avoid interaction with law enforcement unless absolutely necessary. Not because I think they're all bad, but because I don't want to take the chance of getting that one guy or gal who is an egomaniac, or who is a cowboy, or who is whatever you want to call it, just looking for trouble. So, Jared, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that is really the point. I'll say it, I do support law enforcement. I do support especially law and order. And I'm not anti-cop or anti-police or order or law or whatever you want to call it. The problem has become that we have so many law enforcement officers in the United States, and you do have to make a certain degree. You have to sacrifice a certain degree of personal autonomy, whether you like it or not. This is the way it goes. If you want to have law and order, because there's no way that all these cops are going to get it right all the time. It's impossible. And I don't even hold that against all of them. Some of them, the interactions I've had, it was honest mistakes. It just happens that way sometimes. Some not, it's like the old saying goes, some days you're the statue, some days you're the pigeon. And that's the way it is. But when you keep seeing similar patterns, like the whole concept of ID, identification. Okay, you know what? I just watched a video or a couple of videos on this the other day. This is a good example. There was a guy in Iowa, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years ago. And long story short, this dude was out there either watching the sunrise or the sunset on a parking bench, or a park bench. Okay. And long story short, he was just sitting there. I don't know if he was on a rough day. Maybe he was having, child support, or a custody battle, or a divorce, or a breakup, or he lost his job. He was having, looked like he was having a bit of a tough time. Maybe he wasn't. I don't know. But he was just watching the sunrise or the sunset on this park bench in a park in his town in Iowa. And somebody called it in to the police and said there was some guy sleeping on a park bench. So 2 cops show up. This guy was obviously not asleep when they showed up. That should have been the end of it right there. But instead, these 2 cops in my opinion, let their egos get involved, and this almost like crack cocaine addiction to getting people's IDs. Give me your ID. Give me your name. Give me your date of birth. I need your ID. ID yourself. Give me your papers. And next thing you know, this guy is literally in handcuffs, and he goes to jail for he broke no law. He was just sitting there on a park bench watching the sunrise or sunset, and these 2 cops showed up. Their egos got involved, in my opinion, and next thing you know, this guy's in handcuffs and he's in jail. Now, to further bolster this narrative, all the charges were dropped, and he was later awarded a $30,000 settlement because he didn't do anything wrong. But 2 cops showed up, and the guy that was taking the lead, that was leading the charge, he refused to let it go. And because the guy refused to give him ID, he wound up going for obstruction and who knows what. I think they found drug paraphernalia or something. But the premise of the stop was false. So that is my problem. and that you never know which particular cop you're going to get. And I have known a lot of good cops and officers over the years, but I've known plenty who sat there and told me, I'll leave it alone. But there are plenty out there that you would not want to find yourself with in certain circumstances. So that's the point. Jared, I don't know if that answers your question or not. Thank you for writing in. Again, if you have any questions, send us an email, info@gearconvoy.com. But yeah, it's a complicated situation, and I do agree that a lot of the First, or some of the First Amendment auditors, they're doing it for their own aggrandizement. I get that, and they're gaslighting people constantly in these videos. I couldn't go out and do what they do because they're sitting here gaslighting people into, pretending like they don't know what's going on and how the law works and so forth, just to get reactions out of them. And we're going to see this is going to continue. I've talked about this before. You don't have to be a genius to see this coming, though. As more and more law enforcement officers and people in general become aware of these First Amendment rights to record in public, it's going to get more and more difficult to get these crazy interactions that happened all over the place, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago, when people had no idea you could record in public. And so they're going to have to sit here and push it. And we're seeing that now. There are channels that I don't view them regularly because I don't support what they do, but there are channels that sit there and go out and just literally antagonize people to try and get into, basically into fist fights or pepper spray people and bait them into it so that they can get the clicks and the views and so forth. And that's a real shame. So, okay, where are we at on time? Okay, let's go ahead and jump into this next story. Let me get a quick sip, but first, beforehand, you know what? Where are we at? We're at 20, 25, 26 minutes. Let's save both of those stories because they go hand in hand for next week. And let's jump down to the story I was going to talk about, and we'll get into it next episode. And sometime this week was somebody who died out in the wilderness. And then there was another story attached to it. But there was another one. This is a missing rafter found alive after days-long search along Illinois River. A rafter as in riding a raft down the river. Okay? A man identified as Gabriel Vaughn, 25 years of age, went missing on February 16, 2026 during a rafting trip along the Illinois River in southern Oregon after separating from his group near Greenwall Rapids in the remote Kalmiopsis wilderness. When he didn't return as expected, the Josephine County Sheriff's Office and other agencies launched an extensive search that included local search teams, volunteers, and assistance from the U.S. Coast Guard amid challenging terrain and weather conditions. Now, Josephine County is about 2.5 hours probably west, almost straight, due west of here in Chiloquin, Oregon, in the mountains at 4,200 feet of Oregon. When this took place, well, let's go ahead and finish the story. After 5 days alone, Vaughn was found alive approximately 2 miles downstream from his last known location on February 20, with injuries to his hands and feet that prevented him from exiting the area on his own. Rescuers used a Coast Guard helicopter to airlift him to safety and transport him to a hospital for medical evaluation. His survival, blah, 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 yada, yada. Apparently he was rescued by or found or whatever by a private party, and the Coast Guard got involved. They airlifted him out via helicopter and all that. I don't know what in the world, who would be going on a float trip or a rafting trip at this particular time. So just the other day, probably right around the 23rd, right around the 20th, about 4 or 5 nights ago, it got down to 4 degrees Fahrenheit here in the mountains of Oregon. I don't know how cold it was where this guy was, only 2.5 hours away. It couldn't have been that much different. It had to be freezing, unless he was at a significantly lower elevation, I guess. I don't know, but why would you be out on the water in February of the year? And again, this is one of the problems with these reporting. It's almost impossible. 2 of the stories that were going to be in the episode this week, or today, they'll be in the episode later this week. I had to research on 4 different websites to get all the info to present a unified and a clear narrative of what happened. Reporting has just gone down the toilet. It's horrible. Same thing with this guy. I don't know exactly what happened, but apparently he was injured enough where he couldn't get out on his own. Yeah, it was just a mess. So I don't know exactly how extensive the injuries were, but he was airlifted out, and hopefully he's okay. But we don't really know exactly what went wrong, where the rest of his group was, and so forth. I read 3 different articles, and I couldn't get a clear, explanation of what exactly happened. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and spend the next day or two checking that out, and we'll try and update it in the next episode, which we're going to drop probably in 2 or 3 days. But it made me think of the forums. So if you guys aren't familiar, I have mentioned before that I've gone online to a couple of different, knife and bushcraft related forums. And, this is a whole psychological experiment in itself online. If you've ever been to internet forums, it's different than a chat room. I don't really know exactly what a chat room is. I'll be honest. I don't really know. I've never been to a chat room. Never been in a chat room. I see them discussed online, usually in association with Chris Hansen. So I try and avoid chat rooms whenever possible, whatever that actually is. But a forum is slightly different. A forum is where you can go and someone, let's say it's a forum about bushcraft or about knives or survival knives or cooking, whatever, and you can post a thread. How do I make a good pot roast? Or how do I make Michelin star scrambled eggs like Gordon Ramsay or whatever? And then people can sit there and comment and so forth, add pictures, photos, and videos and so forth. The problem that we are seeing, in my opinion, that we see is these forums have now, let me scroll up to my thing here. Where'd it go? These forums have now they're a hot mess. Okay. A lot of these forums have been occupied by this is a naughty word, by boomers. So what we're referring to when we say the word boomer, we're talking about baby boomers. Yeah, and let me be clear, I don't really like that term or any of the terms like that, because really what that does is you're marginalizing a group of people, okay? And boomers I don't like to marginalize people by lumping them into a group and saying these people are ridiculous, these people are annoying, these people are old fuddy-duddies, yada, yada, yada. But I'm going to tell you, the bad boomers are absolutely some of the worst stinking people to deal with in the world. It's like the Crypt Keeper. Remember Tales from the Crypt? The Crypt Keeper, it's like that skeletonized hand reaching up from the grave. They refuse to let go of the little bit of power and authority and control that they still have left because they're aging out of the system now. They're getting to a point of irrelevance. And I hate that. We should honor our elders. I sincerely believe that. I could tell you some stories of times I had to sit there and eat a literal bucket of crap almost because I was trying to show honor to my elders and those who are older than me, because that's the way I was raised. But stinking boomers refuse to let go. It's like that Crypt Keeper's hand on power. It's a skeletonized, metatarsals gripping on to their last vestiges of control and power. They won't let go. And the problem is now they have infested a lot of these forums, and they are just a pain in the neck to deal with. And again, I hate using that term to marginalize a group of people, but a lot of these forums have basically become cliques for boomers. And they sit on there, and if you say anything other than, so the other day I took out my old pocket knife and I cut up slices of an apple to eat, If you say or do anything other than whatever their bizarre, aged-out narrative of life is, then they just want to destroy you. And the problem is the boomers don't realize, the older boomers, they don't have any power anymore, and they don't know how to really keep up with technology, and they're not really relevant anymore. And again, for the millionth time, I hate saying that because I was raised to have a tremendous amount of respect for my elders. But they make it so hard, so difficult to have respect when they're so ridiculous about some of this stuff. And they've run off. This the way internet forums typically go. And I go on a couple of them because I promote my products or my website or my knives or whatever else there. But sometimes it becomes very adversarial because they it's a bunch imagine a bunch of old dudes sitting there harping about the way things used to be, and they refuse to embrace change. They refuse to embrace, and I don't like change either. I don't like change for the most part, but it is inevitable. Change is inevitable, and you have to embrace it to a certain degree, or deal with it, or adjust for it, or whatever else. And boomers are some of the most obnoxious people, and frankly, they're so easy to rage bait and gaslight because they just can't let go of the way things were back in 1976. And, it's really annoying. But anyways, we'll dig into that deeper in future shows. But I tell you what, it's a hot mess online dealing with these forums, because what happens with online forums, a lot of online forums over the years have become just a mecca of tremendous exchange of information. And what almost inevitably happens is sooner or later, and we're in the phase now where it's mostly boomers that are the offenders here. But, and again, that stands for baby boomers, for those of you who don't know, that particular generation. When they enough of them get on in one of these forums or online on one of these groups and so forth, they start to form cliques. It's like a popularity contest in high school. Okay, it doesn't really boil down to who has the best information or who's posting good, interesting content. What it boils down to is a popularity contest, and all these boomers want to sit around and they want to be in control, and they wanted to just sit there and they want to see the content they'd like to see. It's like watching some weird Andy Griffith commercial or episode from 50, 60 years ago. Some guy sitting there on his porch in a rocking chair, peeling an apple with his case pocket knife and so forth, or cutting a big chaw of tobacco and so forth. And anything that challenges that, they don't want anything to do with, and you're the devil and yada, yada, yada. And to be specific, I'm a big fan of serrations on knives. Serrated knives are fantastic for certain applications. Do I think they're the answer all the time? Absolutely not. But boomers in general don't like serrations because it doesn't look like the pocket knife their grandpa had when granddaddy cut a big chaw of tobacco and put it in his mouth. So, it's a weird, nuanced conversation of how to deal with these old farts. But we'll move on and we'll dig into that deeper in a later episode. We go now to where are we? I don't even know how far deep are we into this episode. Okay, let's go ahead and wind it down. Let's go to our final story for today. We go to Florida. Ooh, where else? Okay, I'm ready to rock and roll. This story comes to us from The Independent in Florida. Are you scared now? A 79-year-old man pulls gun on Walmart worker he thought had a bad attitude, cops say. A 79-year-old man in Florida is accused of using a firearm to terrorize a Walmart worker he felt had shown a, quote, bad attitude, end quote. Pascual Santana, born in May 1946. I don't know why in the world that is prominently in the article. What does that have to do with anything, I guess? Okay. Was arrested on Friday and charged with armed assault after allegedly threatening a jewelry section attendant from the seat of his mobility scooter, court records show. So Pascual pulls up in his hover round with bad intentions. Santana has pleaded not guilty to the charge and has demanded a trial by jury. Listen, Pascual. Escúchame. That may or may not be a good idea. I had jury duty. Let me tell you, that's Bacon in the background. Can you please calm down, Bakey? We're by a roaring fire here. It has been bitterly cold. The other night it was 4 degrees Fahrenheit. So we got a roaring fire going. But listen, Pascual, escúchame, amigo. It may or may not be a good idea to get a jury trial. You never know what pack of weirdos or freaks you are going to get. I'll tell this story again some other time. But when I was in there, man, there were some real, in my opinion, absolutely insane people just looking to make an impact in somebody's life in a negative way. But back to Mr. Santana. He has pleaded not guilty to the charge and has demanded a trial by jury. According to an arrest record seen by The Independent, Santana rolled into the Walmart at 5851 Northwest 177th Street in the city of Hialeah, part of the Miami metro area, at around 10:50 a.m. Last year. Stopping at the jewelry section, he asked to see multiple pieces of jewelry, but was told that store policy only allowed him to view one at a time. At this, a sheriff's deputy wrote, the defendant became upset because he felt the victim was not providing good service to him. He began to speak aggressively to the victim and began to call her derogatory names. Listen, give me the stinking on a gold watch and show it to me now, you. I will slap you and then up your now. The worker repeatedly explained the store policy, but Santana allegedly refused to accept it and told her that, quote, she had a bad attitude and she needed to fix it. The deputy said, if you don't fix your bad attitude, I'm going to get up there and slap you upside your head right now in front of all these people. What do you think about that, you dirty... Then the document alleges Santana opened his shirt, in which he had a firearm in his waistband, and stated to the victim, "Are you scared now?" The victim was indeed scared and fled to get help from store security. Several months later, deputies arrested Santana, who apparently insisted that the person seen threatening the worker in surveillance footage was some other armed 79-year-old in a mobility scooter. Court records show that Santana applied for and received indigent status and was assigned a public defender. He is now in jail on a $5,000 bond with no court dates yet listed. All right, folks, remember, don't wait until you have an emergency to prepare. If you wait, it may be too late. If you don't make it out alive, you don't make it out at all. Stay safe out there, folks.